I see an incredible amount of fear and anxiety in our communities and our country and even around the world. There's AI anxiety. The United States has elected a new president. There's a new administration in office. And with a new administration, there's change, there's turmoil. So my questions are, as leaders, how can we help our people navigate through this fear?
Well, it actually gets back down to some of the things that we talked about earlier. Fear is emotional intelligence. Think of emotions as a form of intelligence. So when I am afraid, that's telling me something. It's telling me something is happening. And so go back to human reality. We need, and I introduced the concept of the 4 R's. I will say this: the first thing to do is simply to recognize. That's the first R. But the first R is a 3-part recognition, and this is important. Recognize what I am experiencing. I am feeling fear. So this is self-awareness. I am feeling fear. We teach people to play what we call a freeze game. The freeze game is a moment of pause and self-awareness. And the way the brain works, the physical brain, is practice makes permanent. So the things we repeatedly do get stored into the habit center of our brain. So we want to understand that. So I want to make paying attention to myself a habit. So the freeze game is asking me 3 primary questions and 1 critical bonus question. Here are the primary questions, and they're related to the triangle. How am I feeling right now? I'm scared. So it starts with recognizing the emotion. What am I thinking right now? Whatever it is. I'm scared, so I'm going to make something up. I'm thinking maybe I'm going to lose my job. I'm thinking maybe my house burns down next. Whatever I'm thinking, I don't know. Recognize emotion, cognitive thought, and physicality. Recognize that. And then, what am I thinking? How am I feeling? What am I doing? And then here's the bonus question. Could I be thinking or doing? Because those are the 2 things. Out of those 3 things, I get to decide what to think. I get to think to perform if I want. Most people don't decide what to think. It's amazing. But it doesn't mean they are thoughtless. It just means they're not thoughtful. They aren't deciding what to think. They're still thinking. And most people don't decide what to do, but they're still doing. You are never not doing. So the freeze game says, what am I doing? And there is no nothing. There's no nothing. And some people say, well, I'm doing nothing. There is no nothing. That's what you're doing. And maybe that is what you should be doing, and maybe not. The bonus question, should I be thinking, because I get to decide to think what I want. Should I be thinking and or doing something different than I am? Regardless of how I feel. That's what emotional competence is. Emotional competence isn't about not feeling those emotions. It's about dealing with them. And what we know is emotions will recur. I'm older than you. You and I feel the same set of emotions. When you're my age, you will have had that many more years to practice. But the emotions will be the same. But to your point, you can get better at being in the now, and you actually live in alignment with your values. You get happy out of it.
As you're talking, Doug, one of the things that I'm reflecting on is the conversations I had leading up to the presidential election. I talked to a dozen people about the election and how we can better navigate the election. And one of the things that I realized through these conversations is that I get emotionally charged through the media, watching the media, being online, being on social media. And so I recognized that the stimulus was maybe late night shows or watching the news, watching cable news, going online. And I recognized that this was the stimulus. And so I removed myself from that stimulus. And I decided what to think instead of having people tell me what to think. But that took an incredible amount of self-awareness. And you talked about Representative Lisa McClain. She said there are two types of horses in Washington. There's show horses and there's work horses. And those show horses, while they may believe a certain set of things, they are saying what they are saying to get a response from us one way or another. And so I think if anybody's taking anything away from this conversation, it's recognize when somebody is manipulating, when somebody is pushing on a button that is going to get a certain stimulus from you or a certain reaction from you. I think we can all be better people when we start to identify that early on and extract ourselves from that.
Yes, absolutely. Because emotions will recur. And so the opportunity each of us has is to learn how to deal with them so that we can respond more effectively. So the R's, you actually did it. You recognized, you reflected. That's the second R. And in that process of reflection, you recognized even further that this outside stimuli wasn't that useful. So you were making then a values-based decision. I encourage people to do it explicitly. Just think about it. Because what happens when I explicitly think about the big picture and my values, I am forcing my brain to think, which engages the cognitive brain, and it increases the probability of me making a rational decision. Now, that doesn't mean, and this is very important, it doesn't mean rational decisions always work, nor does it mean irrational decisions never work. And in fact, because irrational decisions often work, they work. And once in a while, they work. It fuels these biases that we have that we knew all along. I knew all along. You did?
Well, I'll just finish with this, and then I have a couple of other questions. The thing that was bothering me about this was I was watching news that reflected my point of view. And they were irritating me. They were agitating me.
Yeah.
They were making me feel a certain way.
They're trying to make you feel that way.
And I thought, why would I spend any time listening to these people? They're just trying to get me fired up. They're trying to upset me. And I wasn't a better person as a result. I was actually a worse person to be around as a result. And it impacted my relationship. It impacted how I treated my family. It impacted my work. So I just was like, no, you don't get that anymore. You don't have that ability to do this. You don't have that agency over me anymore.
That was a wonderful decision. And then to do it. You knew that was a good idea. You decided to execute, and you did. But that sequence is very, very hard because of all these little pressures. But you did it right, because the third R was you just reframed your thinking, and then your response is what you're now doing. That's the 4 R's: recognize, reflect, reframe, respond. Anybody can do it. And then gets back to the 3-pot theory. 3-pot theory is when it comes to my life and what I get to make choices in, pot 1 are those things that I control. I control what I can control, my thoughts and my behaviors. That's pot 1. Pot two are the things I influence. I can influence you or others, or I can attempt to. And based on how I deal with pot one, the more effective I am in pot one, the more effective I am in pot two. But it depends what my intent is, and you go back to and you introduced another bias, the confirmation bias. I do the same thing. I know what networks to watch to hear my point of view, and then they're still trying to agitate me. They're still trying to rile me up.
They don't value you. They don't value your emotions. If they're trying to irritate you and upset you all the time, know that all they want is your attention and your money and your agitation. By the way, Doug and listeners, the 4 R's: recognize, reflect, reframe, and respond. And the 3-pot theory, which is focus on what I control, spend some energy on what I influence, don't spend any time or energy on things I don't control or influence. I teach these to my daughters. They're 6 and 8. And I want listeners to understand, young children can understand these things. Young children can use these tools, and it will change their lives.
Well, in fact, I'm going to stand up here for a minute for your viewers. Sorry. This was the genius of McPherson. Quinn, I believe, was the brains behind this. This is the 3-pot theory. And she, I think, in talking to Don one day, said, well, why would you spend any time on this? No control, no influence. So those are the 3 pots. Put in my control is here in the middle, in my influence, and then no control and influence. And then there was outlets. And what she did is they just disconnected this cord. Let's spend no time here. That's a visual. And she's now 9, I think, right?
Should be 9 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I knew it was coming up. And and her sister's 6. And she did this when? 2 years ago?
Yeah, 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they can get it.
They get it.